In January 2013, Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada, set out on a trip that would take her from the safety of her family home to the bustling streets of Los Angeles. A bright, curious young woman, Elisa was known for her love of writing, photography, and sharing her thoughts online. She kept a blog where she documented her struggles with mental health, her fascination with travel, and her desire to see more of the world. For Elisa, this trip was supposed to be a personal adventure, a chance to experience life outside her familiar surroundings. She traveled by train and bus through California, posting updates for her family and friends so they would know she was safe. But she never imagined that her trip would end in one of the most mysterious and haunting unsolved cases in American history. Her destination in Los Angeles was a place most people would never think to stay, the infamous Cecil Hotel. Known for its low-cost rooms, the Cecil had a long, dark reputation. Built in the 1920s, it was once a glamorous destination for travelers. But over the decades, the hotel became linked to crime, violence, and tragedy. It was a place where transient guests came and went, some leaving behind stories of robbery, drug use, and even murder. By the time Elisa checked in on January 26, 2013, the Cecil Hotel was notorious. It had been home to serial killers like Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, and Jack Unterweger, an Austrian journalist who was later revealed to be a murderer. Dozens of suicides had taken place there, and the hotel was often referred to as a magnet for tragedy. Still, Elisa seemed unaware or unconcerned about the hotel's dark past. She checked into a shared room but was later moved to a private one after her roommates complained of odd behavior. Some witnesses reported that Elisa was friendly and talkative, while others said she appeared anxious and unsettled. On January 31, 2013, Elisa called her parents from Los Angeles. She checked in with them daily, reassuring them that her travels were going smoothly. That call would be the last time they ever heard her voice. When she failed to contact them the following day, her parents knew something was terribly wrong. They reported her missing, sparking an investigation that would quickly capture worldwide attention. Police searched the Cecil Hotel, interviewing staff and guests. They checked her room, her belongings, and any possible leads. Elisa's phone, laptop, and clothing were still in her room, suggesting she hadn't planned to leave. Yet, she was gone, vanished without a trace. Days turned into weeks, and the case began to stall. Detectives combed through hours of security footage, hoping to find a clue. What they discovered would shock not only Elisa's family, but also millions of people around the world. The elevator footage. Released by the Los Angeles Police Department on February 13, 2013, the video showed Elisa Lam in one of the Cecil Hotel's elevators on the night she disappeared. The footage was strange, unsettling, and unlike anything investigators had ever seen before. Elisa could be seen stepping in and out of the elevator, pressing multiple buttons, and making erratic hand gestures as if speaking to someone, or something that wasn't there. At times, she seemed terrified. At others, she acted as if she were hiding. Then, suddenly, she vanished from the frame. The bizarre video went viral almost instantly. Millions of viewers around the globe watched it, replayed it, and analyzed it frame by frame. Some claimed she was having a psychotic episode. Others believed she was under the influence of drugs. Conspiracy theorists went further, suggesting she was possessed, stalked, or even targeted by something supernatural. But the truth was much darker and much harder to explain. The elevator footage was the last known sighting of Elisa Lam alive. For nearly 3 weeks, no one knew where she was. Search teams scoured the hotel, but with dozens of rooms and countless hiding spots, the mystery only deepened. Then, on February 19, 2013, a foul smell began to trouble the guests. Visitors complained of low water pressure and a strange taste in the tap water. Maintenance workers climbed to the roof to check the hotel's massive water tanks. What they found was horrifying. Inside one of the tanks floated the decomposing body of Elisa Lam. The discovery shocked the world and turned a missing persons case into one of the most puzzling unsolved mysteries of the 21st century. When the Los Angeles Police Department released the elevator footage of Elisa Lam on February 13, 2013, They expected the public might be able to help generate leads. Instead, what they unleashed was an internet storm that turned Elisa's case into one of the most viral true crime mysteries of the digital age. The video, only a few minutes long, showed Elisa entering the elevator in a red hoodie and black shorts. She pressed several buttons and then leaned cautiously out of the door, as though checking for someone. But what followed defied explanation. Elisa ducked back inside the elevator, then stepped out again. She moved her hands in odd, almost ritualistic patterns, gesturing at something unseen. At moments, she appeared to be speaking, or maybe arguing with someone who wasn't in the frame. The elevator doors, strangely, remained open far longer than they should have, almost as if the system was malfunctioning. For many viewers, the footage was deeply unsettling. Elisa's behavior seemed erratic, unpredictable, and filled with fear. Some believed she was hiding from someone chasing her. Others thought she was under the influence of drugs or suffering from a mental health episode. But the lack of clear answers turned the video into the perfect breeding ground for theories, conspiracies, and speculation. The online frenzy. Within hours, the video had been shared across YouTube, Reddit, and countless blogs. True crime enthusiasts, amateur detectives, and paranormal investigators dissected every frame. People slowed down the video, zoomed in on Elisa's hands, and debated whether her gestures looked like she was casting a spell, playing a game, or communicating with an unseen figure. Some pointed to the strange timing of the elevator doors, suggesting tampering or malfunction. Why didn't they close as Elisa moved in and out? Was someone outside the frame holding the door? Or did the video itself appear edited, with key seconds missing, leading to suspicions that authorities had cut something out? Others connected Elisa's case to the dark history of the Cecil Hotel. With its reputation as a haven for violence, suicide, and even serial killers, it wasn't hard for the public to believe something sinister had happened. Paranormal theorists argued that the hotel was cursed, and Elisa had fallen victim to the same darkness that had claimed so many others. Mental health or murder. Investigators knew that Elisa Lam had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. Her medical records showed she had struggled with her mental health for years and was prescribed medication. To some, the video was a heartbreaking window into a young woman's battle with her illness. Perhaps Elisa was experiencing a manic or psychotic episode, which might explain her unusual behavior in the footage. But this theory didn't convince everyone. Critics argued that even if Elisa was disoriented or unwell, how could she have ended up inside a locked water tank on the roof of the hotel? The sheer logistics of climbing to that location, where access was supposed to be restricted, made many doubt the idea of an accident. The hotel's reputation fuels suspicion. The Cecil Hotel itself became as much a character in this mystery as Elisa. Known for housing notorious figures like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and linked to decades of violent deaths, the hotel's reputation made the public quick to assume foul play. Guests who had stayed there described it as eerie, unsettling, and unsafe. Security was lax, the neighborhood was dangerous, and the building seemed to carry an aura of tragedy. To some, it was unthinkable that Elisa's death could be a coincidence in a place so infamous. The conspiracies spread. As the video gained millions of views, theories only grew stranger. Some believed Elisa had been stalked and murdered by another guest. Others suggested the hotel staff was involved in covering up a crime. A few even linked her death to government experiments, secret societies, or paranormal entities. There was even a bizarre coincidence. A 2011 film called Dark Water featured a story about a young girl who drowned in a rooftop water tank of a Los Angeles apartment building. The similarities between fiction and Elisa's fate were so striking that some insisted it couldn't be a coincidence. The case had shifted from a missing persons investigation into a global obsession. Millions of people who had never met Elisa Lam were now emotionally invested in uncovering what had happened to her. And then came the most disturbing discovery of all. Elisa's body, found floating in the hotel's water tank. That revelation raised more questions than it answered. How had she gotten there? Why hadn't the hotel's security prevented her from accessing the roof? And most importantly, was she alone when it happened? As investigators dug deeper, the truth seemed to grow only more complicated. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. By mid-February 2013, more than 2 weeks had passed since Elisa Lam vanished inside the Cecil Hotel. Investigators had combed through her belongings, reviewed security footage, and interviewed staff and guests, but no trace of her had been found. The mystery had grown colder by the day, until the hotel's guests began to notice something strange. Visitors complained that the water pressure was low, the taps were running dark, and some described a foul odor and odd taste in the drinking water. Maintenance staff were sent to inspect the hotel's massive rooftop water tanks, each of which was several feet tall, covered by heavy metal lids, and critical to supplying the building's plumbing system. On February 19, 2013, a maintenance worker climbed the ladder to check inside one of the tanks. What he saw would horrify the world. Floating just below the surface was the naked body of Elisa Lam, already in an advanced state of decomposition. The shocking discovery turned a missing persons case into a global true crime sensation. The idea that hotel guests had been unknowingly drinking and bathing in water contaminated by Elisa's remains only deepened the horror. The water tank death, as headlines would soon call it, became one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries of the decade. Puzzle that didn't add up. From the start, investigators faced one central question. How did Elisa get into the tank? The rooftop of the Cecil Hotel wasn't an easy place to reach. The door leading up was locked and alarmed, accessible only to staff with special keys. The tanks themselves were large industrial containers that required climbing a tall ladder to access the top. Each tank had a heavy lid, difficult to open even for trained workers. For Elisa to have reached the inside on her own, she would have needed to bypass locked doors, climb the ladder, open the lid, and then somehow climb inside, only for the lid to be replaced afterward. To many, this scenario seemed unlikely. Police officers insisted it was possible. Perhaps Elisa had found an alternate way to the roof, such as a fire escape. But skeptics argued that even if she reached the tanks, the effort required to get inside didn't align with an accident. To them, it suggested someone else must have been involved. The autopsy report. The Los Angeles County coroner released their findings in June 2013. According to the report, Elisa's official cause of death was accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing factor. Toxicology tests showed traces of her prescribed medications, but no illegal drugs or alcohol were found. However, the autopsy left out critical details. There were no signs of trauma, sexual assault, or defensive wounds on Elisa's body. Yet, her clothes, those seen in the elevator footage, were discovered floating separately in the tank. This raised unsettling questions. Why were her clothes removed? Did she take them off voluntarily in a moment of confusion? Or did someone else remove them? The lack of clarity only fueled speculation. To some, the conclusion of accidental drowning felt rushed, almost like an attempt to close the case without confronting more uncomfortable possibilities. The Cecil Hotel's shadowy role. For many, Elisa's death could not be separated from the history of the Cecil Hotel itself. Over the decades, the building had developed an eerie reputation for tragedy. Serial killer Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had lived there during his spree in the 1980s. Another serial killer, Jack Unterweger, stayed there in the 1990s. Suicides were so frequent that the hotel became infamous among locals as a place where people went to die. With this dark legacy in mind, Elisa's case seemed almost cursed. Guests and amateur investigators alike began to believe that Elisa had become yet another victim of the hotel's disturbing energy. Online forums filled with theories suggesting supernatural forces, cover-ups, or even rituals connected to the hotel's gruesome past. Public outrage and media frenzy. As the story gained traction, the Cecil Hotel found itself at the center of a media firestorm. How could a young woman have gone missing for nearly 3 weeks inside the hotel without staff finding her sooner? Why wasn't the roof searched more thoroughly during the initial investigation? And why did it take complaints from guests before her body was discovered? The discovery of Elisa in the water tank raised more questions than it answered. Theories multiplied. Was Elisa's mental illness the sole explanation for her actions? Did the hotel's poor security allow someone to harm her? Or was there something darker at play? Something no one wanted to admit? The truth remained elusive, but one thing was certain. The public was not ready to accept the idea of accident without more evidence. To truly understand the mystery of Elisa Lam's death, we have to look at the setting where it happened. The infamous Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. On paper, it was just another budget hotel in downtown LA. But in reality, the Cecil had a history so disturbing that it almost became a character in Elisa's story. A backdrop of tragedy, crime, and sinister energy that still haunts investigators and internet sleuths today. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1924 with the dream of being a glamorous destination for business travelers and wealthy tourists. Its marble lobby and grand design gave it the look of elegance. But over the decades, the neighborhood around it declined, especially with the growth of Skid Row nearby. By the 1980s and 1990s, the Cecil was no longer a hotel of luxury. It had become a place for transients, long-term residents, and those struggling with poverty, addiction, or mental illness. This shift in clientele turned the Cecil into a magnet for crime. And with it came a reputation unlike any other hotel in America. The building became infamous for suicides, overdoses, and mysterious deaths. Guests jumped from upper floors to their deaths. Others overdosed in their rooms, and some simply vanished without explanation. Then came the killers. In the 1980s, Richard Ramirez, better known as the Night Stalker, lived at the Cecil while terrorizing Los Angeles. He was a sadistic serial killer who preyed on unsuspecting victims, and legend has it he would return to the hotel covered in blood after his crimes. In the 1990s, Austrian killer Jack Unterweger also stayed there while targeting women in the city. The hotel became so synonymous with violence that it was branded as cursed. By the time Elisa Lam checked in during 2013, the Cecil Hotel was already infamous online, with paranormal investigators and ghost hunters calling it one of the most haunted hotels in America. But Elisa may not have known that history when she booked her stay. The Cecil's security, or lack of it, became a key issue in the investigation. Despite its dark reputation, the hotel was not well guarded. Cameras didn't cover every hallway, and anyone could access the building without much difficulty. Once inside, the layout was confusing. Stairwells, side doors, and fire escapes made it easy to slip in and out unnoticed. If Elisa encountered someone dangerous inside, it's possible that investigators simply had no way to track them. This brings us back to the rooftop, the place where Elisa's body was found. Officially, the roof was supposed to be locked, with alarms set to alert staff if someone tried to access it. Yet, when police investigated, they discovered multiple ways to bypass security. Fire escapes and unlocked access points made it easier than expected to reach the rooftop. And then came the question of the water tank. Could Elisa have gotten inside on her own? Some argued yes, the lids could be opened, though they were heavy. Others said it would have been nearly impossible without help. Even if she did manage to climb in, how and why would she close the lid behind her? That detail still divides investigators and armchair detectives today. Adding to the confusion were the autopsy results. Elisa's cause of death was ruled accidental drowning. No signs of physical trauma or assault were found. Her toxicology report showed traces of her prescribed medication for bipolar disorder, but not all of them, not in the amounts expected if she was taking them regularly. Some experts suggested this meant Elisa had been skipping doses, possibly leading to a mental breakdown. But that explanation didn't satisfy everyone. To some, it seemed too neat, too convenient. If Elisa's death was truly an accident, why did so many details feel wrong? Why was the elevator video so unsettling? Why did no one see her go to the roof? And why, in a hotel with such a notorious past, did this case feel almost destined to happen? For many, the Cecil Hotel itself became the biggest suspect. Not in a literal sense, but as a place where tragedy seemed to collect. Some believed the building carried an energy that pushed vulnerable people toward destruction. Others saw it as a symbol of systemic neglect, where poverty, mental illness, and crime collided in one deadly location. What we know is this: Elisa Lam's story can't be separated from the hotel where it unfolded. The Cecil's long history of death and violence made her case far more infamous than it might have been otherwise. It wasn't just Elisa's death that shocked the world. It was the fact that it happened in a place already drenched in tragedy. The mysterious death of Elisa Lam has fascinated the world for over a decade. From the moment her body was discovered inside the Cecil Hotel's rooftop water tank, people have tried to piece together what really happened. Was it simply a tragic accident caused by mental illness? Or was there something more sinister lurking in the shadows? Let's look at the leading theories and why none of them fully explain this haunting case. Theory 1, a tragic accident linked to mental health. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, and this explanation ties closely to Elisa's struggle with bipolar disorder. Her toxicology report showed she wasn't consistently taking her prescribed medications. Experts have suggested that without the proper dosage, she may have experienced delusions, hallucinations, or paranoia. In this theory, the bizarre elevator footage can be explained as a result of a psychotic episode. Elisa might have believed someone was after her, or she may have been experiencing internal hallucinations. If she was in a confused or manic state, she could have made her way to the roof through a fire escape or an unlocked door, climbed into the water tank, and tragically drowned. But this theory raises another question. How did she manage to access the tank and close the lid behind her? Many believe that without assistance, this would have been nearly impossible. That's why some people think the accident theory doesn't tell the whole story. Theory 2, foul play was involved. From the very beginning, some investigators and online sleuths believed that Elisa Lam's death was not an accident at all. The Cecil Hotel's security was notoriously weak. With so many hidden staircases and open access points, it's entirely possible that someone followed her to the rooftop. Critics of the accident theory point out that Elisa was not seen leaving the hotel, and yet her last known sighting was that unsettling elevator footage. Was she hiding from someone just outside the camera's frame? Did an employee, a guest, or even a stranger lure her to the roof? Some even believe the police investigation left too many questions unanswered. Why weren't all camera angles released? How could officers initially miss her body during searches with dogs? To this day, supporters of the foul play theory argue that Elisa Lam was silenced by someone who knew how to exploit the chaos of the Cecil Hotel. Theory 3, the paranormal angle. Of all the theories, this is the one that keeps the internet talking. The Cecil Hotel has long been called one of the most haunted places in America. With its history of suicides, murders, and serial killers, many believe it carries an almost cursed energy. Paranormal theorists point to the elevator video as proof. Elisa's hand movements and her behavior have been described as resembling possession. Others suggest she was communicating with an unseen presence, possibly a spirit tied to the hotel. There are also unsettling coincidences. 1 year before Elisa's death, a horror film called Dark Water was released in the US. The plot? A young girl drowns in a water tank on the roof of a building, causing dark water to flow through the taps. The similarity is eerie. Was Elisa's death part of a supernatural pattern? Or was it just a disturbing coincidence? The legacy of Elisa Lam. Regardless of the theory, one thing is certain. Elisa Lam's story struck a nerve. The viral elevator footage turned her into a global mystery almost overnight. Documentaries, YouTube deep dives, and online forums continue to dissect her every move in those final moments. Her case also sparked larger conversations about mental health, safety in budget hotels, and the role of the internet in modern true crime. While some internet sleuths offered valuable insight, others spread wild conspiracy theories, blurring the line between investigation and sensationalism. The Cecil Hotel itself has since been rebranded and renovated, but its reputation remains forever linked to Elisa Lam. In many ways, her death cemented its place in pop culture as much as its notorious past residents did. The unanswered question. So what really happened to Elisa Lam? Was it an accident brought on by mental illness and a series of unfortunate events? Was foul play involved, hidden behind the hotel's crumbling security? Or was it something we may never fully explain, an event that defies logic and leaves only questions? Elisa's case is a reminder that sometimes mysteries don't have clear answers. Instead, they leave behind fragments, evidence, theories, and speculation. that keep people searching long after the case is closed. And maybe that's why Elisa Lam's story continues to haunt us. It's not just the tragedy of her death. It's the fact that we'll likely never know for certain what happened that night.